Well, hello, everybody. This is DearMamaSal, and it's Soul Sunday. For those of you who... I've got cream. For those of you who haven't watched the broadcast before, the Soul Sunday broadcast is different in that we slow it right down. And because I do that, I just want to make sure that if you happen to be watching this when you don't want to be really quiet and down, then be aware. And definitely if you're watching it on the replay or you've got it on when you're in the car, please turn it off and, put it on later when the vibration, if you like, is faster. Or if you're trying to go to sleep. And in terms of that, I just got a note from Lizzie, for those of you who know our Lizzie, and she is looking for any input you might have to help her with some insomnia. And it's pretty, significant. So I'm going to be writing to her after the broadcast, but I just thought I'd mention it to you so that, Jody, if you could just remind me to make sure that I do that so that people can put in their input as to different ways that she might be able to help herself. My suggestion will be, number one, that she talks to her doctor about it, because it's not just 1 or 2 nights. It's quite significant. So having said that, it's like, it is an amazing day. It's a quiet day here. Do you know what I mean by that? It's like, it's not sunny, it's cloudy, but bright. And it's sort of like very still. And so I thought it would be a great subject to talk about the quiet today. And how many of you love it when you can get into that quiet place where just nothing really concerns you anymore? You're just in that amazing space of quiet. Patricia Highsmith said, "My imagination functions much better when I don't have to speak to people." Now, I know I've got some creative people in the group, so I wonder if you agree with her. I find if I'm in that creative space, I really don't want to be talking to people either. I think that is why I gave up, to some extent, gave up even trying to videotape when I was painting. And because it was just like I had to talk. And that's not true. I can just record. But it was interesting. It was just like, that sort of changes the whole vibration of why I do this. And so, Jody, I would challenge you to put, your creativity on the, high burn this week and see what you can achieve. And Isabel, I don't know what you've been doing with creativity this week, but, remember, it's a really important part of our lives. I did actually make time to, do a little bit more work on my beer mats that I make, coffee mats, whatever. And, I just spent an hour or two, and I'm going to be doing a little bit more each week, just, that little bit of time just to be with creativity. Mother Teresa said, "These are a few ways in which we can practice humility. To speak as little as possible of oneself. To mind our own business." How many of you find that one a little difficult? I find the first one a little difficult. And to mind one's own business. It's amazing how much stress you reduce if you stop worrying about everybody else's stuff. The next thing she said is not to want to manage other people's affairs. We can give input, but as long as they are adult, it is their life to live their way. And we would do well to keep our noses out of it wherever possible. And some of you probably feel quite challenged with that one as well. This one also is a difficult one. To accept contradictions and corrections cheerfully. I'm working on that one this year. To pass over the mistakes of others. You don't use those as weapons. Just, we all make mistakes. And so I think it's really a good one to work on. And it's a great way. If you've messed up in any way in terms of a supplier or paying a bill or whatever, I want to tell you it is the best way to start the conversation by saying, I just want to know if you've ever made a mistake. And they go, what? And they're going, before I start what I'm about to tell you, I just want to know if you've ever made a mistake. And you know, most people will start to laugh and say, of course I have. And you go, good, because you're going to understand how stupid I feel right now. You know, and then I tell them that I forgot to pay the bill. And you'll be amazed the way that people treat me if I come in from that space rather than from an arrogant one. How many of you have learned enough to be able to accept insults and injuries? I had it happen this week with somebody, nothing to do with DearMamaSal, but somebody started to fling some bad stuff at me. And I was amazed that I was able to just go, that's their stuff. They are angry and they are projecting their stuff onto me. I don't have to take it. And I just literally, didn't respond except to say, I'm sorry, you're angry. That's all I said. I didn't have to come back with, I can beat your insult with a better one. I just literally said, I'm sorry, you're angry. I refuse to get sucked into it. It's amazing how that is possible to do if you practice it. To accept being slighted, forgotten, and disliked. Right? That you can just not worry about the fact that some people are not going to treat you with the respect you deserve. When you have learned that art, your life will be a lot more peaceful, a lot more quiet, and a lot more easy. I mean, it's so much easier for you to live your life when you realize that, some people are going to do that. Everybody doesn't have to like you. Thank goodness. Imagine how busy your life would be if everybody liked you. To be kind and gentle, even under provocation. So even when people are attacking you, to be kind and gentle. I'm working on that one this year. Never to stand on one's dignity. That's a difficult one as well. And if you've got a couple of tasks that you can do, Mother Teresa says, choose always the hardest. I learned something from Jody, who starts every Monday with telephone calls that she has to make and probably doesn't want to. And it's really interesting, Jody, how that's rubbed off on me, where I actually wake up on Monday mornings and go, okay, who do I need to phone? And if there is nobody I need to phone, then I start with, then what's the worst task for today? Let me start with it and get it out of the way. I don't know about you, but right now I can honestly say the world is quiet here. Right in this moment, the world is quiet here. Isn't it a great feeling? Just to be quiet. Norton Justice asked, have you ever heard the wonderful silence just before the dawn, or the quiet and calm just before a storm ends? Or perhaps you know the silence when you haven't the answer to a question you've been asked, or the hush of the country road at night, or the expectant pause of a room full of people when someone is just about to speak, or, most beautiful of all, the moment after a door closes and you're alone in the whole house. Each one is different and all very beautiful if you listen carefully. I think it's amazing. I want to read that again. Have you ever heard the wonderful silence just before dawn? Or the quiet and calm just as a storm ends? Or perhaps you know the silence when you haven't the answer to a question you've been asked. Or the hush of a country road at night. Or the expectant pause of a room full of people when someone is just about to speak. Or, most beautiful of all, the moment after the door closes and you're alone in the whole house. Each one is different and all very beautiful if you listen carefully. I think it's beautiful. Quiet is peace, tranquility. Quiet is turning down the volume knob on life. Silence is pushing the off button, shutting it down, all of it. How many of you have seen that great advertisement? I think it's Calm that does it, where they actually paid incredible amounts of money to do nothing except tell us to do nothing for 30 seconds. It's the most, I don't know who came up with that idea, and I'm certain people didn't want it to be done, but I think it is the most creative use of 30 seconds because most people find it very uncomfortable to do nothing for 30 seconds. I'm not going to do it to you. Rollo said, in order to be open to creativity, one must have the capacity for constructive use of solitude. One must overcome the fear of being alone. And I know some of my viewers do fear being alone. And Ray Bradbury said, that country where it's always turning late in the year, that country where the hills are fog and the rivers are mist, where noons go quickly, dusks and twilights linger, and midnights stay, that country composed in the main of cellars, sub-cellars, coal bins, closets, attics, and pantries faced away from the sun, That country where people are autumn people, thinking only autumn thoughts, where people passing at night on the empty walks sound like rain. I wonder whether he was talking of Ireland there. Jane Austen in Mansfield Park said, I was quiet, but I was not blinded. To be quiet doesn't mean you don't notice things. To be quiet means that you are just more aware. And just because you don't say much doesn't mean people don't notice you. It's actually quite the quiet ones who often draw the most attention. There's this constant whirlwind of motion and sound all around. And then there's the quiet one, the eye of the storm. I wonder if any of you have ever been in a meeting where everybody's going chit chat, chit chat, chit chat, chit chat. And then there's this one person who hasn't said a single word. And when everybody takes a breath, strangely enough, it seems to quite often happen at 20 after or 22. I don't know why that is. But this one voice that you haven't listened to once in the whole meeting will start to talk, and everybody goes quiet to listen because they so rarely talk. And then when they do, you go, wow, that person isn't me. Just in case you wondered. Yeah. Charlotte Erickson said, sometimes you need to sit lonely on the floor in a quiet room in order to hear your own voice and not let it drown in the noise of others. And Franz Kafka said, you are at once both the quiet and the confusion of my heart. Imagine my heartbeat when you are in this state. Isn't that beautiful? Imagine my heartbeat. Deb Coletti said, summer, after all, is a time when wonderful things can happen to quiet people. For those few months, you are not required to be who everybody thinks you are. And that cut grass smell in the air and the chance to dive into the deep end of the pool give you the courage you don't have the rest of the year. You can be grateful and easy, with no eyes on you and no past. Summer just opens the door and lets you out. Isn't that beautiful? I must admit, summer is definitely one of my favorite months, seasons. And I'm thinking about Leslie now. For those of you who remember Leslie in Scotland, you know, it always used to be a big joke around about this time of the year because we'd say, what day are you expecting summer this year? Because the summers in Scotland are not very long. Susan Cain said, now that you're an adult, you might still feel the pang of guilt when you decline a dinner invitation in favor of a good book. Or maybe you like to eat alone in restaurants and could do without the pitying looks from fellow diners. Or you're told that you're in your head too much, a phrase that is often deployed against the quiet and cerebral, those that think a lot. Or maybe there's another word for such people, thinkers. I don't know about the rest of you, but the reason I love doing Soul Sunday is it really brings my vibration down. And it really does set me up for a very different space. And I've often said that it's a really important thing to be able to do for yourself. The same is true of the opposite. If I want to increase my metabolism or do anything else, I will intentionally walk faster, even within my own house. I will do things differently, just so that it is a different feeling. And for example, I find in the mornings when I'm brushing my teeth now, I intentionally put the lid down on my toilet, and I put my foot up on the toilet seat while I brush my teeth. And as I change quadrants in my teeth, I also then put that leg down and put another one up. And what I'm doing is a very quiet multitasking and stretching those muscles. And, I'm quite surprised when I first started to do it, I had some difficulty balancing. And even in a few days, I was amazed this morning how I was able to actually balance very well. And not only that, I was able to, put my foot up that high, which I'd been struggling with. And so I didn't need to do incredibly difficult exercises. It was just like, can I put my foot up at this level and can I balance? And at the same time, I can clean my teeth. And so, these are little things that we can do just to help stretch different muscles. I found if you happen to be walking and, you're just walking at a certain pace, intentionally just increase the length by maybe 3 or 4 inches. You'll be amazed the different muscles you can feel working because you just did that. I find that especially at my age that I shuffle a lot, that I'm aware that I'm starting to shuffle. I'm not walking properly. And so there are days. Hi there, Alexa. Nice to meet you. And I find that there are days when I really have to concentrate on picking my feet up. I know if you're young, this isn't a problem necessarily, but at my age, it really is amazing. Alex, how did you find us? It's great. Big hugs to you. We love the night and it's quiet, and there's no night that we love so well as that on which the moon is confined in the clouds. Wow, that's amazing. Nice to see you, honey. You love listening to the stories, really? Ah, that is beautiful to hear. Thank you. So, Alex, I need your support. I really do need to get back to telling more stories and doing more vlogs. So thank you for telling me that. I want to tell you, I put down more stories than you will know, and I just, for some reason, have stopped editing and putting them up. I actually do the recordings. It's really weird, but I just don't do the edit. Why? It's and by the time I get ready to edit, I think this is so old now, it's not worth doing, when really I suppose it is. There are very few friends who will lie down with you on an empty street in the middle of the night without a word. No questions, no asking why. Just quietly lay there with you, observing the stars until you're ready to get back on your feet and walk again that last little bit home. Softly holding your hand as part of the way of saying, I'm here. It was a beautiful night. And Robert Greene said, "Sweet are the thoughts that savor of content. The quiet mind is richer than a crown." For those of you who remember, who remember the humor of Bob Newhart, he said, "I am a minimalist. I like saying the most with the least." And I was saying in a broadcast, funny enough, earlier, it must have been on Friday, that I was amazed to find out that Bob Newhart never ever was meant to be a comedian. He obviously was, because that's what he is. But he started off life as an accountant, of all things. I have fond memories of him. When I was in Africa, he came to South Africa, which is where I was, and I remember it was at a time when South Africa was blacklisted, and he was in front of a huge packed audience. And I remember, this took such great humor. He stood there in front of us all and said, "You probably know that I am blacklisted because I have come here and to speak to you and to share my stories with you." And there was a huge round of applause from the audience. And he said, "Some of you may wonder where I found the courage to do that." And funny enough, I think every one of us wondered where he found the courage to do that. And he just looked very soulfully at the audience, took that moment just to look around and said, "See the number of people in this room?" And we're all going, "Right." He said, "It was the money." How can you not? How could you not laugh with him? It wasn't some altruistic reason. It was just like he knew he'd sell out, therefore it was worth the risk. And this is a manifesto for introverts by Susan Cain. For those of you who know you are introverted, you are quieter rather than noisy. There's a world for people who are in their heads too much. It's thinkers. Solitude is a catalyst for innovation. Why couldn't my mind go around that one? Solitude is a catalyst for innovation. How many of you, whenever you get a problem, have got into the habit of going, "It's okay, I'm going to sit quietly and try and think out what the answer is." And then you probably find that you might not even get the answer right there. And some of you have enough faith in yourself to say, "It's okay. I will just wait until the answer comes to me." And I am amazed if you read the biographies and autobiographies of incredible inventors. So many of them tell the stories of how their inventions came to them in a dream or in a quiet moment where they'd been struggling so often. And yet, in that quietness, they suddenly got an inspiration to try something. And I'm pretty sure that we've all had that moment when we're in that quiet space. And she also said that the next generation of quiet kids can and must be raised to know their own strength. I wonder whether we are actually raising a generation of quiet kids just by virtue of the internet and a lot of the games. We're also, I believe, raising a generation of very violent children, those that have tendencies that way, through, the very violent games that are available to them. And I don't believe that those games teach them the best in the world at all. But that's my personal view. And this one I really relate to. She said, sometimes it helps to be a pretend extrovert. There's always going to be a time to be quiet later. I love that. I have a routine now that I'm retired. I have a very quiet first 2 hours of my morning. Once I actually, get my feet out of bed, and I will go and make my first coffee, and I will sit quietly with my first coffee and just see, I quite often spend that first hour just looking at things I want to look at on the internet. I want to, do a little bit of research or do whatever, but it's just like, what would I like to do? And then my second hour, my second cup, I have big cup. My second cup, I will then look at things like emails and stuff like that. And it's only after I've had 2 cups that I actually start my real day. So I thought I chipped my cup, but I haven't. For those of you who noticed the spot there, it was actually a bit of She also said, but in the long run, staying true to your temperament is key to finding work you love and work that matters. When I look back on my life, I am very grateful for everything I did. And I did a lot. And I still intend to do a lot. But it's really interesting when I look back on it. I think I spent a lot of time doing things that weren't necessarily in tune with my true temperament. And I had to learn a lot about myself to find out what my true temperament is. And she said, one genuine new relationship is worth a fistful of business cards. Let me ask you something. When did you last start a new relationship? When did you last find a new friend? I want you to give that some thought. And if you think about it, the way that we find friends is to find somebody who needs one. And she also said it's okay to cross the street to avoid making small talk. If you can see somebody and you really don't feel like talking, it's okay to cross the street. By the way, I'd like to say it's also okay to cross the street to talk to somebody who looks like they need a friend. And I say that because I'm amazed how many times I've looked across the street and seen something going on, and I'm thinking, that person looks like they could do with some help. And I will intentionally cross the street and go, can I help you at all? And they look amazed. They go, what? And I go, I was over there and I was watching you and you look like you could do with a little bit of help here. Let me help you. No, I'm fine. I'm going, really? You want me to go away and not help you? Because some people don't realize that asking for help is a sign of strength, not one of weakness. Love is essential. And I want to thank you all for the love. Gregariousness, that's, bubbliness, is optional. And Susan Cain quoted Mahatma Gandhi, who said, in a gentle way, you can shape the world. Outside, there was a pre-dawn kind of clarity, where the monument of living has not quite captured the day. Where the momentum of living has not quite captured the day. The air was not filled with conversation or thought bubbles or laughter or even sideways glances. Everyone was sleeping. All of their ideas and hopes and hidden agendas entangled in the dream world, leaving this world clear and crisp and cold as a bottle of milk in the fridge. That is beautiful. And Vera Nazarian said, "Why do I love thee, O night?" And the answer, because you know I will never answer. And H. Beam Piper said, "I like it when it gets dark at night. And if you want noise, you have to make it yourself." Hilary Taylor Hammond said, "The most unusual thing about quiet is that when you seek it, it is almost impossible to achieve. When you strive for quiet, you become impatient. And impatience is itself a noiseless noise. You can block every superficial sound, but with each new layer extinguished, the next rises up finer and more entrapping until you arrive at last in the infinite altitude of your own righteous mind. Inside is where all memories last like wells, and the unspoken wishes like golden buds, and the pain that you keep, lingering and implicit, staying inside, nestling inside, articulating through the day, through to the day you die. Others inspire us, information feeds us, practice improves our performance, but we need quiet time to figure things out, to emerge with new discoveries, to unearth original answers. So true. It's quiet in the car in a good way for once. No words, no music. Silence seems right. I roll down the windows and lean my head against the doorframe, listening to the wind rush by and smelling the pine trees. I watch stars materialize like someone is dimming the light switch on the night sky. So each shining dot grows brighter and brighter. Isn't that beautiful? And so as we think about quiet, and as we think about our coming week, I would wonder is, as we plan so many things, do we plan to be quiet? I have one friend of mine that I know wakes up every morning and writes. I know some people who wake up every morning and they study. they'll take a quote from the Bible or whatever, and they will, study in that quiet time, get their mind in the right frame. And someone said, I hate when people ask me, why are you so quiet? Because I am. That's how I function. I don't ask others, why are you so noisy? Why do you talk so much? That's rude. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? If we said that, it is rude, and yet the opposite apparently isn't. When the faith is strong enough, it is sufficient to just be. It's a journey towards simplicity, towards quietness, towards a kind of joy that is not in time. It's a journey that has taken us from primary identification with our body and our psyche on an identification with God, and ultimately beyond identification. Prayer is commission. Out of quietness with God, power is generated that turns the spiritual machinery of the world. When you pray, you begin to feel a sense of being sent, that the divine compulsory is upon you. And I don't mind to whom you pray. James Stevens said, quietness is the beginning of virtue. To be silent is to be beautiful. Stars do not make a noise, the ones in the sky, that is. Lee Krasner said, with Jackson, there was a quiet solitude, just to sit and look at the landscape. An inner quietness, after dinner, to sit on the back porch and look at the night. No need for talking, for any kind of communication. Can the mind see the truth of its own incapacity to know the unknown? Surely, if I see clearly that my mind cannot know the unknown, there is absolute quietness. John Linden said, I went to visit Alcatraz years ago when I was on a tour with the Pistols. And I really liked the atmosphere of the place. I genuinely, really thoroughly enjoyed the whole morning there. It was like the quietness and stillness of what is basically a cruel prison complex. And yet I still found some kind of joy in it. That's how I am. Oh, how great peace and quietness would he possess who could and should cut off all vain anxiety and place all his confidence in God. It is strange, I had a conversation with Yvonne this morning, and she was saying to me something, and I remember looking at her and smiling and said, trust God, everything is fine. It'll all happen as it should. I trust God. Marianne Williamson said, I want to be a cheerleader for women who have never even considered running for office or being involved in a campaign, but who, in the quietness of their hearts, might think, why not me? I need both to feel good and the energy of the city and the quietness of the country. I know that some of my viewers are city folk. They like the hustle and bustle and the noise. And yet I also know that many of them are country folk. And they enjoy and really genuinely enjoy the quiet. And some need the hustle and bustle of people around them all the time. And others love those moments when they can be alone and be quiet. And somebody said, I think I'm generally more inspired when I'm away from the technology, whether that's on a beach somewhere or just in my room with phones and screens shut off. I think that quietness is often very inspiring. It's difficult to do, isn't it? I see recently that they have got a new internet service where you can actually control the Wi-Fi. You know, you can actually have Wi-Fi turned off, be that for your children or for yourselves. And how many of you think that's not altogether a bad idea? That we really live ourselves so connected all of the time. I am amazed. Yeah, I can wake up in the middle of the night and it happened to me yesterday, where I woke up, after only 2.5 hours sleep, and I wanted to just check something quickly. Very dangerous. And I literally went into the internet to go and check something. And the next thing I knew, I went to the kitchen and got some coffee. And I carried on checking whatever it was. And then the next thing I knew, I went and got my second cup of coffee. And I never did go back to sleep until last night. But I did make sure I got a really good night's sleep last night. Surely one advantage of traveling is that while it removes much prejudice against foreigners and their customs, it intensifies tenfold one's appreciation of the good at home. And above all, for the quietness and purity of English domestic life. That's from Isabel Bird, obviously a Brit. And so when we think about the quiet, it is time to think about what is it that we've been so busy with. And I keep looking back at my last year of downsizing and getting ready to sell my home. And I realized that doing it quietly really worked for me. When I say doing it quietly, I refuse to rush it or be stressed by it. I just literally kept saying, what's the next step? And I'm doing the same even now that I'm showing the house. I just every day get up and go, what's the next step? And it may be, weed a bit more of the garden, or it may be, clean another window or whatever. But I'm really working hard at not trying to overdo anything, in the faith and knowledge that it is just fine. And when the right person comes, they will want the house exactly as it is, because they will see what they want to see in it and be happy with it. Nicholas Sparks said, too many people seem to believe that silence was a void that needed to be filled, even if nothing important was said. And Virginia Woolf said, I want someone to sit beside after the day's pursuit and all its anguish, after its listening and its waitings and its suspicions. After quarreling and reconciliation, I need privacy, to be alone with you, to set this hubbub in order. For I am as neat as a cat in my habits. And I wonder how many of you in relationship have that quiet time together. Where you just sit, you don't need to converse. One of the things that always amazes me when I go out to eat in a restaurant is to watch the different communications between people at other tables. And you can tell who's been married a long time, and you can tell who is recently in love. And you can tell who is frustrated with life and who is in a very calm space. I weave, I don't know about anybody else, but I weave stories around what I see. You know, I'll watch a couple and I'll go, wow, they've been around a long time, around each other a long time. Because they can just look at each other and smile. They don't have to talk. And Wendell Berry gave these instructions on how to be a poet. Make a place to sit down. Sit down, be quiet. You must depend upon affection, reading, knowledge, skill, more of each than you have. Inspiration, work, growing older, patience, for patience joys time to eternity. Breathe with unconditional breath, the unconditional air. Shun electric wire. Communicate slowly. Live a three-dimensional life. Stay away from screens. Stay away from anything that obscures the place it is in. There are no unsacred places. There are only sacred places and desecrated places. Accept what comes from silence. Make the best you can of it, of the little words that come out of the silence like prayers, prayed back to the one who prays. Make a poem that does not disturb the silence from which it came. Beautiful. Arthur Conan Doyle said, there are many men in London, you know, who, some from shyness and some from misanthropy, have no wish for the company of their fellows. And yet they are not averse to comfortable chairs and the latest periodicals. It is for the convenience of these that the Dionysus Club was started, and it is now contains the most unsociable and unclubbable men in town. No member is permitted to take the least notice of one another, save in the strangers' room. No talking is, under any circumstances, allowed, and 3 offences, if brought to the notice of the committee, render the talker liable to expulsion. My brother was one of the founders. I have found myself in a very soothing atmosphere. How many of you could sit in a room with a lot of other people in total silence, where everybody was totally silent? Hey, Vicky, I think that would be very difficult. And T.F. Hodge said, one who will not accept solitude, stillness, and the quiet recurring moments is caught up in the wilderness of addictions, far removed from the original state of being and awareness. This is dis-ease, as in disease. Lao Tzu also said, allow the heart to empty itself of all turmoil. Retrieve the utter tranquility of the mind from which you issued. Although all forms are dynamic, we all grow and transform. Each of us is compelled to return to our root. Our root is quietude. Rochelle E. Goodrich in the book Making Wishes said, when I say I love silence, I am not being entirely truthful. What I actually love is the abundant, delicate sounds that amplify when I am silent. These curious creaks, mutters, and hums compel my imagination. And Swindle Charles R. said, God has called his creation to find satisfaction in a personal relationship with him and stop trying to manage the world by conforming it to our own expectations and to allow him to govern his creation. He continues to say through the ancient Hebrew worship song, be still and know that I am God. Ellis Peters in The Heretic's Apprentice wrote, they sell courage of a sort in the taverns, and yet another sort. Though not for sale, a man can find the confessional. Try the alehouses and the churches. In either a man can be quiet and think. That's true. I have been in places that were quite noisy and able to sit and just let all that noise go around me, and I can write. And, just somehow or other, that's white noise around me. Have any of you found that you can actually just cut out the white noise? And the only difficulty that I have is every now and then, a server will come and ask me if I'm okay, if I need anything. And what I try to do is explain to them I'm actually writing, so feel free to keep topping up my coffee. Don't worry about asking. And it's just that, and they get it. And then, if I want something, I will ask them. But other than that, I just don't need any attention. Einstein said, a calm and modest life brings more happiness than the pursuit of success combined with the constant restlessness. I think the ability to be able to love what you have and to have what you love is wonderful. I do a little trick with myself. I wonder if any of you do this. I have a little budget that I have where I am allowed to, I call it my play money, where I am allowed to buy things, for example, on Amazon or on Wish or whatever. And it's a little discretionary amount that I can play with. And what I do is all during the month, I will check things and I'll put them on my wish list. And then at the end of the month, I will go, okay, now I can buy. And I look at after the whole month is gone, what do I still love? And, a lot of it is not very practical stuff. For some reason, I noticed that this week I wanted to get little mini cacti. Why? I've never been somebody that grows cactuses or cacti. I've never been somebody that does that. I've had them in my house, but I've never been inspired by them. And yet I found myself wanting to get the seeds and try growing some. Why not? Obviously, it's something new. And my mind wants to do something new. So I went, okay, that's what you want to do. Lloyd Jones, in Here at the End of the World, We Learn to Dance, he said, quiet had a roof and it had walls around it, and you could sit inside it. She had never thought of silence as a place. One of the friends, Tom Williams, told her, the place is in your heart, Louise. Everything else is clutter. I was thinking, Jody, about, I had said to you that I really didn't think that I would be able to do intermittent fasting. And then realized that I do that twice a week without even knowing it. I do it on Fridays, and I found out to my amazement, I also do it on Sundays. And yet my whole mind was in panic about the fact, how can I possibly go without eating for a long space of time? And the answer is quite easily, if I want to. And quite easily, if I need to. And I don't know why that made me smile a lot. And I sort of got up this morning and thought, I'm going to have to think about this, because the time I would normally start eating is 3:00, and I can't eat at 3:00 because I'm about to broadcast and my mind will be busy doing things that I need to do. And I went, never mind, you don't have to worry about it now. And I went off and went and collected my groceries and, chit chat, put down a vlog while I was doing that, and then came back and unpacked everything. And by the time I'd unpacked everything, it was time to do the broadcast. So liquid. And imagine how much I'm going to enjoy my dinner. So isn't that weird? That I really thought that I couldn't intermittently fast, and then till I realized I do it already. And Jody, I kept thinking, and I don't know if anybody that's watching at the moment agrees with me, but we get so tied in to eating at certain times of the day. One of the things that I have learned over the last year is to eat things that I call breakfast. And I'm fascinated to see what time it is that I eat them. For example, I quite often eat breakfast at 3, or I will have lunch at 5:00. And it's funny how your mind goes, gosh, I'm late for lunch. And I'm going, no, I'm not. This is perfectly on time for lunch, because I get up later than most people. And then, I will have a snack. And, at another funny time, I'm going, because Yvonne is walking up the stairs with a treat. And she's going, shh. And I'm going, no. Because she's such a kind person. It's my frosty day from Yvonne. Thank you, Yvonne. She even went and got me a straw. Thank you. I love you too. For those of you who don't know, Yvonne is my very dear friend. And I've got to remember, I've got to wait for it to thaw a bit. Anyway, and she actually, I inherited her with the house when I bought it, and she was my tenant. And since then, she's become a very dear friend. Mm. It's so good. The only thing is, how many of you are waiting for me to get a brain freeze? And Kathleen Thompson said, why the club was just the quietest place. The quietest place in the world. A place where a woman could run into a brush her hair and wash her hands and change her library book and have a cup of tea. I sort of miss the local tea house. Will Advise said, silence is the invisibility of talking. I'd take half an argument over half a silence any day. And I'd take peace and quiet over a full-blown argument any other day, unless it's Tuesday. Somebody said, don't mistake quietness for weakness. Evil is often better addressed in silence. As I was saying, that I had that situation this week where somebody was verbally attacking me because of their anger, and I just chose not to respond. It was an amazing feeling. Listen to this. I think this is beautiful. Omar Achani, I think that's how it's pronounced, said quietude, as music is not in the notes, but in the silence between the notes. The real joy of life is not in the activities, but the quiet between the activities. How many of you can feel that in your life? It's just like, I don't know, I find myself doing that. I keep going, I need to go and do X, Y, and Z, and then I can be quiet and relax. But does anybody else talk to themselves like that? I need to go and do the so that I can then sit down and enjoy whatever. And it's just like, it's like a balancing act I play. I find myself compartmentalizing my life in different ways. Busy time and then quiet time, and then busy time and then quiet time. Kilroy J. Oldster in the Dead Toad Scrolls wrote, personal ignorance and shallow thoughts led me to misconstrue reality. Instead of taking an occasional respite from meeting work-related deadlines and reflecting upon the growth of the inner self, all my personal energy was devoted to efficiently performing daily tasks, responding to the never-ending heave of the external world of busyness. Busy people tabulate the value of their life of work by what they achieve, which can prove meritorious. We can also hide from ourselves by never devoting select intervals of quietness for self-reflection. We need periods of silence and contemplation in order to nurture our spiritual development. I find it amazing at the weekends. I quite often get to Thursday night and not know what it is I want to talk about that on the broadcast. And, it's amazing. I have this routine that I do. There are certain books that I own, and I will open up a book and start reading it. And I will wait for one word to catch me. Hi there, Nyasha. I find one word will catch me and I go, gosh, that's a great word. I know I can do a broadcast around that word. And then, I will later on pick up another book and start reading. And within a very short space of time, there's another word, and I go, wow, that is a wonderful word. And then on Sundays, always a chat, it's just wonderful feeling. Because on Sundays, I literally say, and what peaceful word can I come up with today? What peaceful word can I possibly do a broadcast around today? And I'm hoping that those of you who have listened to this have found some peace. Can I ask you, those that are in the chat room with me, how are you feeling right now? And the reason that I want to ask you that is because if you think about it, we have spent the last hour or so just literally slowing down the vibration at which we're moving. How many of you can feel that? Yeah, Isabel's saying she's feeling relaxed. All right. So, Isabel, do you understand that anytime that you're feeling stressed, just come back and re-listen to this? Because you know that if you listen to this, you are going to feel relaxed. Jody says, I'm feeling so calm. Jody, I know that you achieve so much. I think far more than you think you do. And I want to tell you that part of the reason that I feel the way that I feel is because I know that you all enjoy feeling the calm. And so, whereas when I first started to do this, I wondered, will people understand why this is important? And the answer is, of course they will. And it is the reason that I put the Sunday broadcast together in one big playlist, so that any time that you have problems sleeping, that you can put this series, the Soul Sunday series, onto play, and then know that it will help you relax. Just put it in and let it play in the background. And so this to me is really the joy. And it always makes me laugh inside that I spend the time bringing the vibration down on a Sunday, and then I go and finish cooking dinner. But what I've also learned to do is to make sure that I've got as much of dinner prepared before it ever starts to be a problem. For example, before I started the broadcast, I actually barbecued a lot of vegetables that I wanted to serve tonight. Just 3/4 cook them, and they're just keeping warm in the oven. But they've already got that barbecue look about them and taste about them. And for those of you who I know, I barbecued them in lime and olive oil and salt and pepper and things. And then I'm about to do barbecue chicken, and I've had them marinating while I do the broadcast. And they're marinating in lime and honey and soy sauce, a little bit of plum sauce. And I learned something. that I didn't know before, and I'm going to be testing it today. I was reading somewhere, watching somebody talk about barbecuing chicken, and they said, if you want the perfect barbecued chicken, don't keep turning it. And you might want to think about this in terms of cooking, grilling or whatever. What they said is, turn it, put it onto the barbecue. I'm doing breasts of chicken, the sort of one breast side down, just long enough to get the sear marks on it that show everybody that this is barbecued, which made sense. But as soon as you've got that done, they said turn it over and then just baste the chicken with whatever glaze you are using. And don't turn it again. Just keep coming back and giving it another layer of glaze and let it cook a bit more. And then give it another layer of glaze and then cook it a bit more. How many of you are going, that sounds so clever? And so I'm quite excited about that. And so Jody, you might want to try that in terms of, when you grill your vegetables, and I know that you do a lot of pan meals, which is don't turn, only turn the chicken once, and the rest of the time just keep brushing the glaze on and see how that goes. I must admit, when I watched that being done, it looked wonderful. And the other thing was the glaze wasn't constantly being taken off, by turning it over and then it got stuck, on the pan or whatever. It just keeps that. Sounds good, doesn't it? And so we've got a couple of people before I go that I just want to make sure we got some thoughts and prayers going out. For those of you who know Erin, I did ask for some thoughts and prayers for Erin because she has to have another biopsy of her liver. So let's wish her, all the best for that and send our thoughts and prayers. And Nana has a very dear friend, Maggie, who is just gone into hospice care. And so she asked for thoughts and prayers. Does anybody have any other thoughts and prayers that you would like me to announce to the Dear Mama Sal group? I said at the beginning of the broadcast that our Lizzie is looking for any ideas to help her sleep. She's been an insomniac for a number of days. And so I just asked Jody to remind me for this evening that I'll put up a note on Facebook and see what ideas. I must admit that I found playing piano music, literally, going and finding, or, as I said, listening to the broadcast. I see, Niesh just saying that Mama Sal, your voice is indeed calming. I found myself listening to Friday, and later I woke up saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe I missed the ending. Well, I'm delighted that you were that relaxed. That is my goal. A little bit of learning and hopefully a lot of relaxation. So, are there any other thoughts and prayers or anything that I need to remember and remind people of? Just let me know. And does anybody have anything they want to share or anything that they'd like a little bit of help with before I go? This is so good. There's part of me that's going, Jody, I'm not sure what happens when the first meal is a liquid ice cream. Because I think that's what it is. So good. My taste buds are loving it. Right. right, everybody. So I'm going to go and finish cooking my incredible meal, which I hope will be really tasty. And Jody says, it tastes amazing. That's what happened. Yeah, it does. That's actually a very good point, Jody. All jokes aside, I think you're right, because, you haven't had all those different tastes in your mouth all day. And so the fact that you get this taste of ice cream, liquid ice cream, it's wonderful. One of the things that I have been doing is actually crushing up ice and milk and throwing in one strawberry, and just literally blending all that up and like this. Not ice cream because, well, it's ice and milk, but it's not ice cream. And it's so refreshing. And it also, I find, oh, good night to you, Isabel. You'd love a milkshake with a real banana, but you can't. Okay. But it's funny what I found, Isabel, all jokes aside, that I find, for example, one strawberry is enough to give it that taste, or half a banana. In my case, I can't eat banana. Half a banana also is more than enough. And so less is more in a way. And that's what I'm trying to teach myself. And what I found, yes, a little hint of vanilla extract. What a good idea. What do you mix that in with, Yasha? But what I found so amazing is that when I'm busy, at the computer or whatever, I can have that beside me and just occasionally just take a sip, and it keeps me going because that taste is so good. So it's not that I need food, I need the taste. That's what I'm realizing. That sounds very unhealthy, but it isn't. I'm interested to hear that that hint of vanilla extract is such a good idea. Do you put that into water, Nyasha, or? Oh, she uses milk, ice, and caramel syrup. Yes. Yes, and I'm going to try that. It's a great idea. I'm going to try milk with a hint of, with just a drop of vanilla in it. That would be a great idea. Thank you, Nyasha. Anybody else got any ideas now that we're being creative? Yeah, I think it's very clever. Yeah, vanilla is something you don't want to overdo, right? Just a hint of it is what you need. So that's a very clever idea. And maybe, maybe even, half a teaspoon of honey would be another really great idea, just to give it that incredible taste. And so I'm going to be experimenting. More ice than I normally put in, like less than a cup of milk with it, but I just blend up with about a cup of ice and something else, and it really does. It's wonderful. I'm really enjoying it. Yeah, and apparently Jodie's going to be enjoying it too. All right, everybody. So thank you all for the learning. Thank you all for your time. And remember, if you will, to look after one another. But most of all, please remember to look after yourselves. And remember that life will get in the way every now and then, and it will interfere with your best laid plan. And when it does, smile if you can, take a deep breath and go, apparently, I just need a break from my direction. Nyasha, I agree that staying away from honey due to diabetes. I also, as you know, do that. But what I've discovered is, a tiny little bit here and there is really not causing me very much problem. It's all the other stuff that we eat, Nyasha. All right. I've managed to keep my blood sugar down within normal range for over the last 3 months. So it's possible to do. Just do it. Don't do it every day. And, I have to thank Jody for that as well, because she did teach me that a treat now and then is definitely on the cards. It is possible to eat well and still have the occasional treat. It is when we have the occasional treats all the time that we get into trouble. All right, everybody, so look after one another, and most of all, remember to look after yourselves. This is DearMamaSal saying bye-bye for now. Be at peace.